It started with one scream outside a migrant hotel, and by nightfall, the whole of Essex was burning. Streets once quiet turned into front lines. Towns that never made headlines were suddenly shouting the same word: enough. What began as whispers online became sirens in the streets. And before the government could even issue a statement, over 100,000 people were already marching through the night. No leaders, no slogans, no fear, just fury. No one expected Epping, that small, polite corner of Essex, to become the face of Britain's biggest uprising in decades. But at 6:47 p.m. it began. A single fire alarm outside the Maplewood Migrant Hotel, a few police cars, nothing unusual. Until the crowd realised the story they'd been fed didn't add up. Minor disturbance, they said. Routine check, they claimed. But tell that to the hundreds standing behind the barricades, holding candles that flickered not for mourning, but for proof. Because the truth wasn't on TV anymore. It was right there, reflected in flames dancing on hotel windows. Inside those hotels, witnesses said tensions had been building for weeks. Residents complaining of noise, disappearances, police visits that never made the reports. Then came the breaking point. A local woman attacked outside the car park, the suspect under assessment and unavailable for comment. It was the same script, recycled tragedy wrapped in polite government phrases, but this time Epping didn't move on. This time it snapped. By 8 p.m, roads were blocked. Every street leading to the hotel was packed shoulder to shoulder. Parents, pensioners and school kids holding their phones high, live streaming what the BC wouldn't show. Police arrived, but so did the chants. Protect our streets! Protect our children! The crowd wasn't just angry, it was betrayed. Betrayed by silence, by spin, by the same calm voices on the news that told them everything was fine. Even when everyone could smell the smoke. At first, reporters called it a misunderstanding, but within an hour, misunderstanding turned to riot. Then riot was softened to local disturbance. Funny, isn't it, how the words change faster than the truth? The Home Office released its statement, and we condemn all acts of aggression and misinformation. But who exactly was misinformed? The people watching their towns fall apart, or the officials hiding behind microphones and marble walls? As midnight approached, the air thickened with tear gas and disbelief. The police lines shook. Radios crackled with phrases no one wanted to hear. Containment breached. Formation broken. One officer was caught on a live stream saying, "We can't hold them anymore." Yet the crowd wasn't breaking to destroy. They were breaking to be heard. And in that chaos, a single image went viral. A teenage boy standing on a lamppost waving a tattered Union Jack with one line scrawled in marker: "You ignored us." That image spread faster than any order, faster than any government narrative could spin. By dawn, every town in Essex had seen it, shared it, and understood it. Because this wasn't about one hotel anymore, it was about years of being told to stay quiet. It was about every parent too afraid to walk home after dark, every promise made on TV that turned to ash by morning. Essex wasn't rebelling against migrants, it was rebelling against being lied to. Still, Westminster called it a momentary lapse in public order. But tell me, how do you call 120,000 people momentary? How do you call smoke rising from 10 towns local unrest? The truth was no longer whispered. It was screamed across counties, and it was far too loud to silence. Because as the sun rose over the charred remains of Epping's High Street, one question echoed louder than the sirens. By morning, Epping was no longer alone. From Chelmsford to Colchester, every town in Essex felt the tremor of that night. Videos flooded social media faster than the authorities could delete them. Burning flags, police lines collapsing, people shouting through clouds of smoke. What began as one town's outburst had become a movement, a ripple of rebellion stretching across counties. Every clip came with the same caption: "They lied to us." That phrase became the anthem of the unrest. 3 words more powerful than any speech, more unfiltered than any politician's promise. The government, caught off guard, scrambled to control the message. Downing Street meetings ran into dawn as ministers argued over wording. Should it be called civil disturbance or antisocial behaviour? Every line of their statement was polished, tested, softened. And still none of it mattered. The footage spoke louder. For every official statement, there were 10 live streams from the streets showing the truth they refused to print. And when the BBC anchors read from their teleprompters with their rehearsed calm, the people watching didn't believe a single word. Trust had left the room, and in its place stood anger, raw, real, and broadcast to millions. By noon, it wasn't about Epping anymore. It was about Essex, about Britain itself. Town squares filled with protesters who didn't even know each other's names but shared the same exhaustion. Builders, teachers, nurses, veterans, everyone had a reason to show up, not for politics, but for pride. For protection, for proof that they still mattered in a system that had stopped listening. Shops closed, schools emptied, police reinforcements were pulled from other regions. Yet for every van that arrived, the crowds only grew. "Return them," someone shouted. "Fix it," another cried, but no one from Westminster came. Not one. That afternoon, a memo leaked. Redacted lines, timestamps, signatures blurred, but still legible enough to reveal the truth. The release of violent offenders was no accident. Operational oversight, it read, due to administrative backlog, bureaucratic language for blood on the streets. When that document hit the internet, Essex didn't just riot, it erupted. For years, they had been told to be patient, to trust the system, to wait for reform, but patience had expired. Enough wasn't a slogan anymore. It was a declaration of independence from hypocrisy. Meanwhile, newsrooms across London were ordered to maintain calm and avoid incendiary framing. Editors whispered of phone calls from upstairs, of stories pulled minutes before air. But silence is louder than words when the country can see the smoke rising. In Brentwood, protesters carried signs saying, "Show it or lose us." And when the cameras didn't come, the people became their own reporters. Live feeds, drone footage, interviews shouted through the chaos. The streets became the newsroom, and truth became viral. By sunset, the rebellion had a rhythm. Chants rose with the sirens, lights flickered through the haze of tear gas and torches. One video showed police officers removing their helmets one by one, stepping back instead of forward. Not as traitors, but as citizens who finally understood. That image spread like wildfire. A uniform no longer represented control. It represented choice. The choice to see what was right in front of them. As the night grew darker, the Home Office released its most desperate line yet. Public safety remains our top priority. But no one was safe. Not from fear, not from anger, not from the truth that had already escaped their control. The blackout began quietly. Live streams cut off mid-sentence, accounts suspended for review, posts marked as misinformation. Yet the hashtags kept climbing, the truth kept spreading, and the crowd kept growing. By the time dawn crept over Essex again, smoke still lingered above the rooftops. The streets were littered with broken glass and burnt signs. But the people were still there, standing, waiting, watching. And as the sirens faded into the distance, one question remained, whispered through the fog, defiant and unshaken. The morning after the chaos, Britain didn't wake up. It was forced awake. News anchors sat behind their desks with perfect smiles and trembling hands, reading from the same script sent overnight by the Home Office. The word riot had disappeared. In its place came unrest and disturbance and community tension. Words so empty they could have described a traffic jam. The government didn't silence the truth with censorship. It smothered it with politeness. Every headline looked the same, every sentence polished until it meant nothing. The blackout wasn't a switch being turned off. It was a curtain being slowly drawn over the country. But outside that curtain, people already knew. Mothers holding phones to the morning sky showed their feeds, blinking with content unavailable. Protest clips vanished one by one, replaced by cheerful updates about weather, sports, and recycled political apologies. Yet for every deleted post, 10 more appeared. The truth had gone underground, and that made it unstoppable. The phrase, "they're not showing this, are they?" became a rallying cry. A whispered rebellion passed from phone to phone, from street to street. Inside Westminster, panic wore a polite suit. Ministers gathered in emergency sessions, their faces pale under the fluorescent lights. Words like containment, narrative management, and optic stabilisation filled the air. The Prime Minister tried to sound composed, saying public confidence is being restored. But no one believed him, not even his own staff. Behind those closed doors, the aides leaked notes. Advisors resigned quietly, and the walls that once held power now echoed with confusion. Someone suggested deploying military support. Another warned that it would look like a coup. They argued about control, while the streets outside had already decided the government no longer had any. By midday, an internal memo surfaced online. A simple typed page stamped confidential. It wasn't the message itself that broke the country, it was the tone. Cold, detached, almost bored. Field morale declining. Officers overwhelmed. Psychological rotation recommended. That wasn't policy, it was surrender disguised as protocol. The people reading it saw what it truly meant. The system had collapsed under its own weight and no one wanted to admit it. Then came the moment no one expected. A police sergeant in Colchester removed his helmet mid-shift, placed it on the pavement and stood still. Cameras caught it live. No speech, no gesture, just refusal. Within hours, others followed. By evening, entire lines of officers stood unarmed, watching rather than fighting, eyes hollow but resolute. The chant changed again from "protect our kids" to "stand with them too." It wasn't an uprising anymore, it was an awakening. The people and the protectors stood on the same side, both betrayed by the same silence. The Home Office tried one last press conference, calling for calm and unity. "We understand the frustration," said the minister, his voice trembling, "but this is not who we are as a nation." Yet as he spoke, the live comment section beneath his broadcast flooded with one reply repeated thousands of times. Then who are we? For once, the question wasn't rhetorical. It was real, and it demanded an answer no one could give. By nightfall, the lights around Parliament dimmed, the windows shuttered. London felt hollow, as if the capital itself was holding its breath. Ministers slipped out of side doors, escorted by silent guards. Meanwhile, across Essex, candles flickered in windows, not as protest, but as warning lights to a country that had finally seen too much. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was paralysis. A nation that once prided itself on order now found itself staring at disorder it created. You could feel it in the air. The disbelief, the fatigue, the realisation that something irreversible had already happened. The trust had snapped, and no policy could mend it. As midnight struck, an eerie calm settled over Britain. The chants stopped, the sirens faded, and only one sound remained. The hum of uncertainty, steady and cold. The blackout wasn't hiding the truth anymore, it had become the truth.